The Zaltharian Empire was old, proud, and unchallenged. For more than 500 years it had ruled the stars with an iron grip. Its fleets stretched across 100 systems, and its archives were the greatest treasure of all. Every planet, every people, every ship that had ever been discovered was recorded in those endless libraries. To the Zaltharian, knowledge was power, and power was control. Their arrogance was deep. They believed the galaxy was already theirs, and that nothing could surprise them. To their lords and admirals there were no mysteries left. Every rising civilization was catalogued, studied, and either bent into obedience or crushed into dust. And so the Empire lived in a dangerous calm, a calm built on fear and domination. On the quiet edge of their territory, near a lonely yellow star called Yeren 6, a border outpost kept watch. The crew of this station were ordinary soldiers, men and women who had grown used to boring patrols, false alarms, and endless silence. They passed their shifts drinking bitter rations, complaining about their officers and staring at empty screens. Nothing exciting ever happened on the border, nothing ever changed. But one day everything changed. It began with a whisper from the deep. A faint signal appeared on the scanners, one that did not match any recorded ship signature. At first the technicians thought it was a glitch. They checked their instruments again and again. The signal remained. Slowly, it grew stronger. Then, the object appeared. The crew froze as their screens showed the image of a vessel emerging from the void. It was massive, shaped like a blade of shadow, black as the endless night. No lights marked its hull, no banners or emblems gave away its origin. It was silent, drifting with calm, steady power. The border commander leaned closer, his throat tight. Identify the ship. The computers worked, searching the archives. Thousands of results flashed and vanished. The machine searched again and again. But every time the answer was the same. No record found. The commander felt his blood run cold. Every ship in the galaxy was supposed to be known. From the smallest pirate craft to the grandest battleship, the Empire had them all listed. Nothing was outside their knowledge. Nothing had been for centuries. But here before his eyes floated a vessel that should not exist. Impossible, whispered one of the technicians. The commander wanted to agree. He wanted to dismiss it as a mistake, but his eyes could not deny what the screen showed. Something unknown had entered their space, and it was not afraid. Alarms rang across the station. The crew shouted, their voices cracking with fear. Some tried to contact nearby fleets, others whispered prayers. The shadow ship drifted closer, silent, indifferent to their panic. For the first time in generations, the Zaltharian Empire felt something it had forgotten. Fear of the unknown. News traveled. Fast. The report reached the nearest fleet base within the hour. At first, Admiral Varus did not take it seriously. He was a man of the Empire's old pride, a veteran who believed the archives never lied. Unknown ships did not exist. Rebels sometimes built hidden cruisers, smugglers sometimes disguised their hulls, but the Empire always knew the truth in the end. Still, the recordings were clear. The Admiral could not dismiss them. He scowled as he listened to the trembling voice of the border commander describing the impossible ship. He felt annoyance more than worry. He hated weakness, hated fear. To silence the panic, Varus gave a simple order. 3 of the Empire's finest warships would be dispatched. Each one was a giant of steel, carrying weapons powerful enough to shatter planets. To the Admiral, sending 3 was almost overkill. He believed the unknown vessel would be crushed quickly and the border would return to silence. The order was sent. The fleet moved. On the border station, the crew watched in silence as the 3 warships appeared on their screens. They were majestic, glowing with energy, bristling with weapons. Each ship was a symbol of the Empire's power, a reminder of why no one dared challenge them. Confidence returned to the station crew. Nervous laughter replaced fear. Surely, they thought, nothing could stand against warships like these. The unknown vessel would be destroyed, and life would go back to normal. The 3 warships approached the black vessel. Weapons locked. Orders were given. The border commander held his breath. The warships fired. Space lit with burning light. Beams that could carve mountains apart. Missiles streaked through the void. The station shook as the weapons roared, and then, silence. The crew leaned forward. The black vessel had not moved. The weapons had touched it, but they had done nothing. The beams vanished like sparks against water. The missiles dissolved into nothing. "Direct hits," shouted a gunner. "Then why is it still there?" whispered another. The unknown vessel glowed softly, a faint pulse of light along its hull. It did not open fire. It did not unleash fury. It simply released a single wave, gentle and soundless. In an instant, the 3 warships were gone. Not destroyed, not broken, simply gone. Erased, as if they had never existed. The crew of the border station sat frozen. Their voices failed. Their hearts pounded in terror. For centuries, the Empire's warships had been the unshakable wall of their power. Now 3 of them had vanished, like dust blown into wind. The commander felt his knees weaken. He whispered, words that no officer of the Empire had dared to say in living memory. We don't know what it is." And across the stars the truth began to spread. The Zaltharian Empire, master of the galaxy, had finally met something it could not explain. The uneasy calm was broken, and the age of fear had returned. Admiral Varys paced in his command chamber, the weight of dread pressing on his shoulders like a physical force. He had ruled fleets for decades, seen battles that had flattened worlds, and yet nothing had prepared him for this. A ship that did not exist in their records, an impossible vessel, had appeared at the Empire's border, and 3 of his finest warships had been erased in a single instant. He stared at the holoscreen, replaying the footage over and over. The black ship drifted through the void, silent and calm, while his fleets dissolved before it. No explosion, no debris, no warning, just nothing. He could feel the pride of the Empire shrinking in that moment. The galaxy, which had always bent to the will of the Zaltharian, was suddenly bigger, stranger, and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. "This cannot be real," Varys muttered. But even he knew the truth. What he had seen could not be. Ignored. He summoned his officers. Each one entered the room with rigid posture, hiding fear behind practiced expressions, though their eyes betrayed them. "Admiral," said Commander Rail, his voice steady but tense, "the vessel, our scans, cannot penetrate its hull. Our weapons are useless. It moves with speed beyond any known physics. We have never faced anything like this." Varys rubbed his face. "Then we must assume it is not a threat. Yet." Rail's brow furrowed. "It is a threat, Admiral. We lost 3 ships, thousands of lives. This is not a warning. It is a demonstration." The room grew quiet. Outside the chamber, the hum of the command station felt hollow, eerie. The border crew could still see the black vessel pulsing softly. On their screens, untouched, untouchable, fear had begun to spread like a disease through the ranks. Even the youngest technicians could feel it. Varys clenched his fists. The Empire had faced rebellions, alien invasions, rogue systems, and even natural disasters across the stars. Nothing had ever shaken their control. But now, something had. Something that defied every law, every record, every assumption. He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare a second fleet. Every warship within range. Mobilize. We will overwhelm it." "There is no other choice," the officer hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Admiral, but even our best weapons are sufficient," Varys snapped, masking the fear in his voice. "I will not tolerate doubt. We are the Empire. Nothing can survive against us." Even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. The memory of the 3 vanished warships refused to leave his mind. Their disappearance was not like any battle loss he had witnessed. There were no wrecks, no signals, no traces. It was as if the ships had never existed. Orders were sent across the border. A fleet of 5 warships, each larger and stronger than the first 3, prepared to launch. Pilots ran checks, engineers tightened bolts, and crews loaded weapons with hands that trembled slightly, though none admitted it. Every soldier knew the Empire demanded confidence, but in the quiet corners of the hangars, fear whispered. Meanwhile, the black vessel drifted closer to the inner system of Yaren 6. Its presence was like a shadow across the galaxy, silent and absolute. Sensors tried to read its energy signature, its mass, even its direction, but the readings fluctuated wildly. Sometimes the ship seemed enormous, other times it seemed to shrink to nothing. The borders of science bent around it, as if the vessel existed partly outside reality. At the command station, one technician finally broke the silence. "Admiral, it's like it knows what we're thinking. It reacts before we act. How is that possible?" Varys took a deep breath, swallowing pride and disbelief. "Then we prepare," he said quietly. "We prepare as we always have. We do not surrender. We do not run. The Empire does not fear the unknown." Yet inside, a tremor of fear lingered. For the first time in his life, Varys realized that the Empire's archives, the sacred libraries of knowledge that had ruled the galaxy, were useless. The Xaltharian thought they understood the universe, but the universe had just shown them it understood them far better. The 5 warships launched, their engines blazing like fire across the void. They formed a tight formation, weapons primed and ready. Every pilot carried the weight of centuries of pride. They believed in the Empire's strength. They believed in the certainty of victory. As they approached the black vessel, Varys watched every readout, every sensor, every crew member. Time seemed to stretch. The station grew tense with anticipation, each second heavier than the last. Then, the first shots were fired. Cannons unleashed torrents of energy, missiles streaked through the void, and for a moment, the crew dared to hope. But hope shattered almost instantly. The beams passed through the black vessel like smoke. The missiles disintegrated before impact. Nothing touched it. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the vessel pulsed a soft glow. It moved, not fast, not aggressively, just with a quiet, inevitable grace. One by one, the 5 warships began to flicker. Alarms screamed, lights blinked, and crews shouted. And then each ship vanished. No fire, no explosion, no wreckage, only silence. The border station's crew watched in horror as the screens went blank. Their pride, their confidence, their faith in the Empire, all erased in a single instant. Varys sank into his chair, trembling. The weight of reality pressed down on him. Something, somewhere in the galaxy, had the power to destroy their fleets, with a thought. And the Empire, so long accustomed to being the unchallenged rulers, was powerless. In that quiet, awful moment, the first true fear of the Xaltharian Empire was born. Fear of the unknown. Fear of something beyond their control. Fear of the stars themselves. And the black vessel continued to drift, silent and patient, as if waiting for them to understand what had just happened. The Imperial Council chamber was unlike any place in the galaxy. Its walls were tall, carved from polished black stone that reflected the glow of countless holographic displays. Thousands of years of power had been concentrated here, in the voices of lords, ministers, and advisors who had shaped the course of the Xaltharian Empire. And yet, for the first time in centuries, those voices were filled with panic. News of the black vessel spread like wildfire through the Empire. The reports were simple, terrifying. 3 warships had vanished without a trace, then 5 more. Each account grew darker than the last. By the time the Imperial Council convened, fear had already begun to ripple through the vast halls. Admiral Varys stood at the head of the chamber, his uniform stiff, his expression grave. Around him, lords shouted over each other, ministers slammed their fists against tables, and scribes scuttled, trying to record every word. The room felt alive with tension, as if the very air had thickened. "How can this be?" roared Lord Carrion, his voice shaking. "Our fleets, the pride of the Empire, erased, vanished. How can any vessel exist that we do not know?" The chamber erupted into chaos. Ministers demanded answers. Military leaders called for more warships. Some lords suggested retreat, hiding the Empire's weakness. Others screamed for immediate annihilation. The sound was deafening, and still the black vessel drifted across the border, silent, untouchable, unseen in person but burning in every report. Admiral Varys raised his hand, and slowly, the chamber fell silent. He looked around at the faces of men and women who had always believed themselves invincible. Now, they were terrified, not of a weapon, not of a rebellion, but of a question they could not answer. "What is this?" "This vessel," he began, his voice steady, despite the storm, around him, "does not match any record. Our knowledge, our archives offer nothing. Our fleets have been rendered powerless, and yet it moves without aggression. For now." A minister scoffed. "You speak cautiously while our fleets burn. This is not caution, Admiral, this is surrender." Varys's eyes darkened. "No. This is reality. You cannot fight what you do not understand. You cannot destroy what exists beyond your knowledge." The chamber murmured, confusion and outrage spreading. Varys continued. "We must learn before we act. Our pride demands it. Our survival depends on it. A mistake now could erase everything we have built." Silence fell for a brief moment. Then the shouting returned, louder than before. Laughter of disbelief, cries of rage, and shouts of command filled the hall. The Council of the Empire, supposedly the wisest minds in the galaxy, was unraveling before its own eyes. Outside the chamber, the border fleets scrambled to regroup. The black vessel remained calm, moving steadily like a shadow drifting across the sun. Each report coming in only increased the panic. Sensors failed. Communications faltered. Every attempt to analyze or predict the ship ended in frustration. The unknown was complete. Meanwhile, back in the chamber, the ministers debated furiously. "Send more warships," demanded one. "Block all exits. Show them our strength." "No," yelled another. "We cannot face what defies physics. The fleets are gone. Thousands of our soldiers vanished. This is no ordinary enemy. We must retreat." Varys's heart ached. He had served the Empire with loyalty, pride, and discipline. And now he watched it tear itself apart. Fear had replaced confidence, panic had replaced reason, and arrogance had been shattered. The Empire, which had always ruled the stars, was suddenly powerless in the face of the unknown. He spoke again, quieter this time, as if trying to reach the minds of those too frightened to listen. "This is not an enemy we can fight in the usual way. Every strategy, every weapon, every plan we have, it is useless. We are forced to face something beyond our understanding, and we must survive it, not with pride, but with intelligence and caution." Some lords shook their heads. They could not accept this. To accept it was to admit weakness, and weakness was anathema to the Zaltharian. But Varys did not flinch. The truth weighed too heavily on him to lie. Outside, the border station reported another miracle, or a warning. The black vessel paused. It seemed to hover in space, silent, unhurried. For a moment, it almost felt alive. The scanners picked up subtle pulses of energy, precise and controlled, unlike any engine or weapon known to the Empire. Every officer, watching, felt a chill, the cold knowledge that they were not facing a machine but something conscious, something aware. The chamber listened to these reports with a mix of disbelief and awe. Even the most powerful lords felt small, as if the galaxy itself had expanded suddenly, revealing how tiny their control truly was. Varys took a deep breath and said words that shocked everyone with their honesty. "For centuries, we believed the galaxy could be catalogued, controlled, and dominated. We have erased civilizations, silenced worlds, and crushed every voice that challenged us. And now, we are faced with the echo of those very actions. We are not invincible. We are not eternal. And we are not alone." The chamber fell silent, this time in contemplation rather than chaos. Even the loudest voices could not argue with the truth. The Empire had met a force beyond records, beyond technology, beyond arrogance. Something new had arrived, something that refused to obey their rules. Outside, the black vessel pulsed softly. Time seemed to stretch, the space around it humming faintly. For the first time in centuries, the Empire realized the galaxy was not theirs to control. And perhaps it never had been. Fear, shame, and awe mixed into one impossible emotion. The Council of the Empire, once the most confident rulers of the stars, understood something fundamental. The rules had changed, and the black vessel continued to drift, silent, patient, unstoppable. The Empire's pride burned brighter than ever as hundreds of warships prepared to face the unknown. Admiral Varys watched the fleets assemble, a sea of metal and energy stretching across the void. Each ship was armed with weapons capable of leveling worlds. Each crew had been trained to follow orders without question, to execute the Empire's will without hesitation. Yet even among the finest soldiers, unease lingered like a shadow. The Council had demanded overwhelming force. Every available vessel within range was mobilized. Thousands of engines ignited, creating a river of fire across space, their trails marking the path of the Empire's might. Pilots felt the weight of history on their shoulders. They were the heirs of centuries of domination, the chosen protectors of an empire that had never known defeat. And yet, they all felt the same tremor, of fear as their sensors locked onto the black vessel. It hovered silently in the void, almost casual in its presence. It moved with an elegance that belied its size, and its hull shimmered faintly under the light of distant stars. No weapon had touched it so far, yet every signal suggested it could destroy their armada with a thought. Admiral Varys took a deep breath. "We strike together, we do not hesitate, we do not falter. For the Empire," he said, his voice steady though his heart pounded. The warship surged forward, forming an immense formation, energy beams glowing, cannons ready. The first salvo of the fleet's combined firepower surged toward the black vessel. Thousands of beams of light blazed through space, streaking like deadly fire across the dark void. Missiles followed, a thunder of metal and energy, each designed to pierce the strongest shields. For a brief moment, the crews dared to hope. Perhaps this unknown ship could be destroyed. Perhaps the Empire's centuries of power would hold. But the hope was short-lived. The beams struck the vessel and passed straight through it as if it were a shadow, insubstantial, untouchable. The missiles dissolved mid-flight, burning up into nothing before reaching the hull. Sensors picked up no damage, no react. The truth settled like dust over centuries of pride. Humanity, the race they had erased, dismissed, and forgotten, was alive. And it had returned, not with mindless fury, but with power so overwhelming that the Empire could only watch in helpless. How Admiral Varys stood alone in the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the faint pulse of the black vessel in the distance. It was calm, almost peaceful, as if it could feel the weight of every soul in the Empire and chose not to act with anger. Every flicker of light along its hull was like a mirror, reflecting the sins of the past. Varys's hands gripped the railing, so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had lived for the Empire, fought for the Empire, and believed in its right to rule the stars. And now he realized that right had been an illusion. Reports came in from the outer colonies. Entire worlds once claimed by the Empire had been quietly liberated centuries ago by humans who survived in secrecy. They had grown stronger, smarter, wiser, without fanfare, without bloodshed. And now, they were here to remind the Empire of what it had done. The council chambers were no longer filled with anger or shouting. Instead, they were filled with silence tinged with shame. Lords and ministers avoided each other's eyes. No one spoke, for fear that words might shatter the fragile understanding settling over them. Even the most arrogant, who had once thought themselves untouchable, felt the weight of guilt pressing down, heavier than any fleet, stronger than any weapon. Varys broke the silence. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like a bell. For centuries, we believed we were masters. We cataloged worlds, crushed civilizations, erased names, and silenced voices. And yet, the one race we tried to destroy survived. They thrived. And now they have returned, not to annihilate, but to teach us a lesson. A young officer dared to speak, trembling as she held back tears. But, Admiral, why haven't they attacked us? Why are they waiting? Varys shook his head. Because they do not seek revenge in the way we understand it. They are not here to destroy what is left. They are here to show us what we have lost, what we almost erased from the galaxy forever. And in that, we must find our lesson. The Council began to sift through the old archives, desperately searching for knowledge of the humans, of the small blue world they had long ago condemned to death. Hidden files, once locked and forbidden, revealed fragments of stories, records, of battles, of courage, of resilience. And in those stories, the Council saw a truth they had tried to bury. Humanity had fought, survived, and thrived, even in the shadow of the Empire's power. For the first time, they felt something entirely unfamiliar: remorse. Every world they had silenced, every civilization they had erased, now reflected in the pulse of that single black vessel. Each lost life, each erased name, each forgotten song and story came back to haunt them, and they realized the magnitude of what their arrogance had caused. Varys turned to the Council. His voice was firm but heavy with emotion. We cannot undo the past. We cannot erase what we have done. But we can change our future. If we are to survive, we must understand this lesson. Power without respect, conquest without justice, is meaningless. Outside, the black vessel pulsed gently. It did not fire. It did not attack. Its presence alone was a message, a living testament to resilience, to endurance, to survival against impossible odds. Every officer, every soldier, every council member watching it could feel its intent. The humans had returned not for war, but for remembrance. They wanted the Empire to remember what it had done and to understand what it had lost. A silence spread through the fleets. Even the soldiers who had trained for decades, who had always known their ships were invincible, felt fear mingle with awe. They had been shown that true strength did not lie in fleets, weapons, or fear. True strength lay in survival, in courage, in hope, and the humans possessed it all. Varys closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of centuries wash over him. The Empire had built itself on pride, on domination, on control. But now all of that seemed hollow. Humanity's return was a reminder of every mistake, every crime, every act of arrogance the Empire had committed. And the realization burned. Deep within him, they were not invincible. They had never been. One of the counselors finally spoke, voice trembling. Admiral, what do we do now? Varys opened his eyes, staring at the pulse of the black vessel. He did not smile. He did not shout. He spoke simply, quietly, but with conviction. We survive. We learn. We change. Humanity has reminded us that the galaxy belongs to all who live in it, not just those who conquer it. If we continue on our old path, we will fall. If we choose to listen, to understand, perhaps we can endure. The chamber understood. For the first time, the Zaltharian Empire faced the truth. Their dominance had limits. Their arrogance had consequences. And the humans, the race they had tried to erase, had returned to show them the weight of their sins, not with destruction, but with patience, with clarity, with quiet strength. Outside, the black vessel drifted, closer to the Empire's core systems. Its presence was calm, its power undeniable. Yet there was no aggression. It was a reminder, a living testament to survival, endurance, and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be forgotten. Admiral Varys stood alone once more, gazing at the vessel. He felt the weight of the Empire's past pressing upon him. He felt the fear of the future, uncertain and vast. But above all, he felt hope. Hope that the Empire could learn, change, and perhaps survive. The black vessel pulsed, softly, as if acknowledging his thoughts. Its presence was not just power, it was a lesson. A reminder that the galaxy was not theirs alone, that life, survival, and courage mattered more than fleets, more than conquest, more than pride. And for the first time in centuries, the Zeltharian Empire understood the full meaning of respect and the full weight of guilt. The void was quiet. Stars shimmered faintly as if holding their breath. The black vessel floated like a shadow across the galaxies, calm, patient, and impossibly powerful. Admiral Varys watched it from his command deck, his heart heavy but clearer than it had ever been. The fleets that had once defined the Empire's strength were gone. Armadas vanished, worlds trembled, and yet the humans had not destroyed anything beyond what was necessary to teach the Zeltharian a lesson. The council chambers were filled with a solemn understanding. No one shouted. No one demanded war. The arrogance of centuries had been stripped away. Every officer, every soldier, every lord felt the weight of what had occurred. For the first time, they understood what it meant to face a force far greater than pride or weapons. An intelligence, a will, and a moral strength that could never be erased. They survived, whispered a young officer, voice trembling. They survived everything, and they came back to show us. Varys nodded slowly. Yes, humanity was written off, erased from our records, forgotten in our archives. But they lived, they thrived, and they returned, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to remind us of what matters. A message appeared on the hollow screen. The translation was simple, elegant, and clear. We do not seek to destroy what remains. We are not your enemies, unless you choose to be. We exist to show that life, courage, and hope cannot be erased. The galaxy belongs to all who live in it, not to those who claim it by fear. Silence followed the words, heavier than any cannon fire, stronger than any weapon. Every person in the chamber felt it in their bones, in their hearts, in the very core of their pride. The humans had returned to teach a lesson the Empire could not unlearn. They had returned to remind the Zeltharian that life was not theirs to dominate. Varys turned to the council. This is our moment. We can continue as we always have, blinded by arrogance and fear. Or, we can change. We can survive if we learn, if we respect, if we remember that power without compassion is empty. The chamber remained silent. Slowly, nods appeared. Slowly, eyes met with understanding. The lesson was not just clear, it was undeniable. Humanity had survived against impossible odds, had risen from the ashes of attempted extinction, and had returned not for vengeance, but for justice, for truth, and for hope. Outside, the black vessel pulsed faintly as if acknowledging the Empire's understanding. It had done its work. The fleets had been shattered. Pride had been humbled. Knowledge had been challenged. And now, it could retreat, leaving the Zeltharian Empire forever changed. Varys felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that the humans had not sought blind destruction. Sorrow for the lives his empire had taken in centuries past. Every fleet, every world, every voice they had silenced now weighed upon him. But for the first time, he felt a path forward, a way for the Empire to endure, to learn, to change. Prepare a message, he said softly to his communications officer. To the humans, respect, gratitude, understanding. Tell them, we have learned. The officer nodded. Hands shaking, he prepared the transmission. Words of humility, of recognition, of acknowledgement that the humans had taught them what power without conscience could never convey. The black vessel lingered for a moment longer, its calm presence filling the void. Then, without warning, it began to move. Not in haste, not with aggression, but slowly, gracefully, like a shadow gliding across the stars. It moved away from the Empire's core systems, back toward the uncharted space from which it had emerged. Varys watched, feeling a strange mix of awe and sorrow. Humanity had left without